Welcome to the Filthy Heathens podcast. My name is Kirk. Today is going to be all politics. And by politics, I mean we're going to go over CPAC, so the Conservative Political Action Conference. We're going to go over the highlights from that. That was last week. I had to record this a little bit later due to circumstances beyond my control, namely my children. I had to delay recording this, so we're going to go over that. Basically, we're going to touch on three main topics. It's going to be Trump. Obviously, Trump is going to be the most important part of that conference. He gave a speech, very long speech, so we're going to go over that a little bit. We're going to talk about Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. He was the host state, so Florida CPAC was in Florida this year, so he gave a speech about 10 minutes long. We're going to go over his contributions and where he kind of fits in the Republican Party right now. I'll go over the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. She gave a speech about 25 minutes long as well, and easily the best speech at CPAC. So I'll go over that as well, and I'll touch on a couple of other speakers. For the most part, it was what you'd expect from a CPAC. For the most part, kind of boring, but still, it has some highlights that are really good, and I think show a lot of good things going forward for the Republican Party and the conservative movement in general. So, without further ado, let's get started. We'll start with the headliner, the main event, the the showstopper. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump gave a speech there. My issue here, and I'm going to be upfront with this right now directly, under no circumstances do I think Donald Trump should run for president in 2024. I think he set out to accomplish what he needed to accomplish. It's too bad that he didn't get a second term. It would have been great to have him as president again for another 4 years. Under no circumstances, though, should he run for president in 2024. This is no longer about satisfying his ego. We need to make sure that the party can move on from him. So, and that's kind of the best thing that I took away from Trump's speech. It was very long, very convoluted. He went over a lot of things and rambled a lot. And unfortunately, when I saw a lot of the left-wing media and late-night comedians kind of bashing him for rambling on and on and on, he did that. That's the problem. So the main thing I took away from Trump's speech is that we as a conservative movement and the more conservative political party, Republican Party, we need to find a way to embrace most of Trump's policies, but without Trump. Now, not to say Trump can't be a figurehead in the Republican Party. It's not like we just need to remove him and get rid of him altogether. I think he has weeded out a lot of the disingenuous, spineless Republicans that need to be gotten rid of. People like the Bill Kristols, people like anybody associated with the Lincoln Project. I'm glad they're gone, and they were never really conservative to begin with, from as far as I'm concerned. But also, he's shown us the light on a lot of these rhinos that we've all stomached, and to some extent you have to deal with a little bit of rhinos in your party. We're going to have to deal with that. Democrats don't have to because they don't have principles, so it doesn't really matter. Republicans have to deal with some people that are going to be a little bit different, a little bit more liberal, maybe a bit more to the right as well. We have to be that big tent party. Democrats don't really have to do that. They just kind of force everybody into to do what they want. So we do need to find a way forward where Trump isn't the leader of the party, but he is kind of that influence. He's that person that is there to give the party some backbone. And one of the highlights of the speech was that he kept pointing out, hey, Rush Limbaugh, when Republicans were at their worst, and I said this when I did my episode talking about after Rush died and what he kind of meant to me growing up as a young conservative, Trump kept referring back to Rush Limbaugh during his speech, and Rush Limbaugh is that guy who, when Republicans were at their worst as a party, so after the 1992 election, and then also after the 2008 election, when Republicans were at their worst, Rush Limbaugh was there to provide a little bit of backbone to the conservative movement. I think now that Rush is gone, Trump might end up taking that spot where he, at least in the short term, because remember, he's almost 80 years old. At least in the short term, he's going to be that person that provides the backbone and the spine, the real guts, the testicular fortitude, if you will, to this party. And I think that's where his place should be. He should be that person in the background being like, hey, remember, we need to be doing this. We need to be doing this. We need to do this. And then also, I mean, since he is going to be that loud, boisterous person out in the crowd, kind of, keeping people accountable, since he will have that much influence and that much power, when a president, someone like whoever ends up being the next Republican president, when they come about and say, look, Trump, you need to just sit down and shut up on this one. I got this. That will give them a bit more sway. Like, hey, I will stand up to Trump when I feel it's necessary. I think Trump, for the most part, is right on a lot of things, but when he's wrong, go ahead and call him out. And I think that will be a good thing for the Republican Party going forward. So, like I said, under no circumstances do I think Trump should run in 2024. I think he can play kingmaker in the Republican Party for a while and be that backbone that Rush Limbaugh used to be. He can be that guy. The reality is, though, and that just highlights my point, is that Trump isn't going anywhere. So he was obviously the most popular person, the most popular speaker at that event. All of the news outlets carried his speech because they needed the ratings, because ever since he left office, their ratings have gone to shit. So what I really got from Trump's speech, though, is that he laid out what Trumpism really is. The problem is that Trump doesn't lay out his vision clearly and concisely. And like I was saying earlier, he rambles, he goes on and on, he sidetracks. Now, that's great and all, because if you're talking to a friend, if you're talking to a good friend, maybe you haven't seen in a while, you're gonna go on tangents all over the place. That's a good conversation, and that's great as a conversation. But when you're trying to talk to a group of people, that you need to be more clear and concise. And I think that's where we need to be. I mean, 90 minutes. He spent 90 minutes going, a 90-minute speech. I mean, that's just too much, man. Too much. So I think he laid out the vision, though, pretty well. He wants, it's basically everything he's been talking about for the last, if you followed him this far back, since like 2000, but especially in the last 5 years, he's been talking about these things. Like, we need better trade deals. We need a better trade deal with China, which he actually got done. He got a decent trade deal done right before COVID started. So he got that done. He, redid NAFTA, so we have the USMCA trade agreement now. So he's talking about making good trade deals for the U.S., stronger border security, more, obviously a wall. There's a, law and order, making sure police are well-funded, not defunded. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's talking about that are just basic conservative principles. They have been my whole life, make sure our immigration laws are being enforced, making sure that our police are well-funded and being able to get to the right place at the right time, protecting Second Amendment rights, protecting free speech. Here's my problem with Donald Trump, is that he had 4 years to crack down on big tech, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, on their censorship of conservatives, and he didn't do anything. I mean, honestly, the one thing he could have done that would have probably stopped a whole bunch of censorship is jumped immediately, as soon as it became a thing, just shut down his Twitter account and went over to Parler. If he had done that, Twitter would probably be out of business by now, and there's no way Amazon could have shut down Twitter or shut down Parler like the way they did. So that's the one thing he could have done that would have ended a lot of the censorship. On top of that, I mean, there are antitrust laws that he could have definitely tried to. I mean, the DOJ could have done this. You know, the Department of Justice could have looked into this certain collusion that some of these big tech companies obviously have, and gone after them and say, hey, if you keep censoring people, then we're going to start regulating you. So he could have done that. The main thing that I liked, though, during this speech, so, you know, he went over what Trumpism really is, and it's really just a lot of repeating the same goals that every Republican in my lifetime has said that they want to accomplish once they become president, and then they never do. So it's so he gave basically here, we have to have a conservative form of government. We need to be more conservative, and we need to actually govern. And it's basically just, you know, George W. Bush with a backbone and less bombing. That's really what it is. And so I like that. Also, he's also making sure that we're introspective as well. So we cannot survive as a political party. We can't be a big, you know, we can't really be a big tent when you have people who are willing to stab the party in the back. So people like Mitt Romney, who voted twice to convict Trump for bullshit impeachments that were brought against him. He needs to go. He cannot. He should be he should be a Democrat. I don't care if he votes conservative 90% of the time. When push comes to shove, Mitt Romney bends over and takes the anal swab from the Chinese government, or in this case, Joe Biden's government. So he'll happily stab the Republican Party in the back so that the media can fawn over him for a little bit. Liz Cheney as well. Liz Cheney is still grasping at the whole, I'm going to bash Donald Trump. And Donald Trump hasn't been president in 6 weeks. So I like that he called out people, but he didn't just call them out. He made sure to point out that we are not going to split the party. He doesn't want to create a whole new party aside from Republicans. That makes no sense whatsoever, and I'm glad he realized that. The best thing to do, and I've known this and I've seen this, you study history, the best thing to do is not to create a third party and try to compete against a particular brand. That's how we ended up with Bill Clinton in 92. That's how Woodrow Wilson, probably the worst president we've ever had, ended up being president. Definitely, I would probably say he's probably the most racist president we've ever had. That's how he ended up being president, and that's how he got into World War I. So it's not to divide the party. It's to make sure that we primary the people that should be primaried. People like Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney should not go unopposed in his next primary challenge. People like Ben Sass. Overall, I tend to like Ben Sass, but I think he's just a younger Mitt Romney. I think eventually he'll just, become lily-livered and a bit of a bitch over time. So people like Ben Sass, probably need to primary them as well. And then obviously there's people in the House that need to be primary as well. We need to make sure that we have these people who actually stick to core values and aren't willing to just bend over and take it from the Democrats every time things get a little too rough and they have to start answering some tough questions. Get in there and get it done. And it makes me, Mitt Romney, I think, is the worst case because he's run for president. He's been the Republican nominee for president. And he knows how to handle the pressure. And it shocks me that now that he's a senator, he has no problem just shrinking within himself and being a coward whenever the going gets tough. So it's really sad to see that, but I think overall for Donald Trump's speech, he was just talking for 90 minutes about what we need to focus on, which is core conservative values that have always been a part of the conservative movement for as long as I've been alive. but also making sure that we not only are a big tent, but we can be a big tent, but we can't have our people in our tent stabbing each other in the back. That just isn't how it goes. So overall, Trump's speech, like I said, I fast forwarded through a lot of it because it was a lot of people cheering, but it was a lot of him rambling. And overall, it was a good speech, but he could have given this 90-minute speech and been done in like 20 minutes. So yeah. So overall, I think bottom line is Trump is still the most powerful Republican in the country. He's not going anywhere. However, the speech highlights he should not run for president in 2024. He needs to be that kind of, Jiminy Cricket. It's really weird saying Trump should be a conscience, but he should be that kind of guy that's in the background, making sure that our Republican leaders are sticking to the values that our party says they stand for. Now, the highlight of the epitome of what I believe is Trumpism without Trump is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He is, if you just want a poster boy, if you want to know, what does the Republican Party look like without Trump? Ron DeSantis. That's who it is. So he's probably done the best job as far as COVID. Considering his population is the second oldest in the country behind Maine, but Maine has as many people as Idaho, or has less people than Nevada. I mean, it has less people than a lot of states. It's a very small populated state, a lot of area, so it's a lot of older people live there. But Florida, so essentially Florida has almost every old person in the whole freaking world living there, but they have comparable case fatality rates to states like Texas, but definitely states like California. I live in California. California is still basically locked down. There's still lots of areas that still can't do indoor dining. Gyms are just now getting kind of opened up. They've been doing outdoor workouts. I mean, I have a lot of friends still in the gym industry who are like, yeah, we're finally able to kind of open up our doors. I've been seeing their posts. They're like, yes, I'm turning on the lights again. We've been turning them off for weeks, and we try to open up here and there whenever we can. So, California has been locked down like crazy. New York has been locked down like crazy. And Florida basically has comparable death rates to them. They have less population and they have an older population. And we know this disease affects older people more, and they're doing just fine. They're doing better. So while California and New York have scandals going on with their lockdowns, Florida's been opened up for the most part. They don't really have mask mandates. They do have capacity limits on certain event gatherings, but for the most part, they're as opened up as any place in the world right now. And they're doing basically just as well, which means if they have the second oldest population in the country, and they have the same exact numbers as a state like California with the fifth youngest population in the country, that means Florida's doing better when it comes to COVID. So Florida's doing great, and I think if you go and watch Ron DeSantis' speech, very, very short, like only I think maybe 10 minutes, not much. If it's longer, it's not much longer. I think he was easily the most popular speaker that wasn't Trump. He was easily the most revered. Even the head of CPAC, he said, Ron DeSantis is who I call America's governor. And I think he's right. I think a lot of the Republican Party is kind of looking and kind of following Ron DeSantis' lead for the most part on COVID and on a lot of things. I think Texas, for example, is basically kind of stealing ideas from Ron DeSantis. As soon as Ron DeSantis does something in Florida, Texas is like, yeah, we're going to do that now too. So it's I think you're seeing in Ron DeSantis, you're seeing Trumpism without the Trump. And I like it. So far, he looks good. He needs to win re-election in Florida for Florida governor in 2022 to really have a shot at 2024. But right now he is, to me, I think he's by far and away the front runner right now to be the nominee for the GOP in 2024. And I have no problem with that whatsoever, at least right now. So this is March of 2021. As of right now, Ron DeSantis is the guy I want to see run for president in 2024 on the Republican ticket. So, and going back to what I was saying before about how Trump rambled and went on for 90 minutes, what he was talking about, Ron DeSantis said the same thing Trump did in 10 minutes. Only he was polished, clear, concise, was affable. I mean, he comes across as knowing what he's talking about. He was obviously reading a prepared statement, but he can go off the cuff a little bit. If you've seen any of his press conferences, you know he can kind of jab back and forth. He called out all the people that needed to be called out, the media especially. Democrats, Joe Biden. His speech read like he was reading, like he was giving a press conference. So imagine if he was president, if he was giving a press conference and he was just making some opening remarks before he took questions from the press. That's basically what his speech sounded like. And that's really Trump. Again, Trumpism without the Trump is everything is much more polished. It's the same policies, all the same policies for the most part, but everything is much more clear, concise, polished. There's less character defects, and there's less sidetracks with like, hey, let me argue with people for no reason whatsoever. Let me kind of stumble over myself. No, there's let's stay on message, let's stay focused, and let's make sure we're getting our point across. And that is what we need. We need Trump's backbone, Trump's spine, Trump's testicular fortitude, and his willingness to fight. But we need it in a much more refined and polished person. As of right now, that is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And as of right now, I see nobody else that should even try to run for president in 2024. It should be Ron DeSantis. Now, next, what I'm looking at, the next speech, easily the best speech of the night was the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem. Easily the best speech. It was great. She was, again, another person who is clear, concise, very polished. Obviously, I mean, she's young, she's attractive, she's pretty nice to look at, which is good. She also, I mean, again, best speech. So if you're talking about, if anybody who took a high school speech class knows what a good speech looks like, and she gave a great speech. It was very nice. It was a very good speech. It sounded really kind of like a State of the Union speech, or if she was accepting a nomination for governor, for senator, for president. If she was giving a speech to the, let's say she was going to be president, she was going to be the nominee of the Republicans. If she was going to be the nominee, this is what it sounded like. It was that kind of very presidential speech. It was very good. She gets to highlight the fact too, is that during COVID, she never shut down her state. And right now, that's what a lot of Republicans and conservatives are searching for. They're finding that person who was a little bit Nostradamus, who was Nostradamus at the beginning. Like, hey, now that we've gone through all this shit for a year, and we know that these lockdowns probably should have never happened, that a lot of these like mask mandates and shutting down companies and shutting down businesses and, forcing people out of work, it was completely overblown and probably should have never happened, and definitely should have never happened past about a 6-week period. That is something, and you're looking back and you're seeing this lady who, no, we didn't do anything. We kind of protected our seniors a little bit. We had a few things to kind of make sure it was good. Things went okay, but yeah, we didn't go crazy. We didn't try locking people down. We didn't tell people to stay at home. If we trusted people to do their own thing and to make good choices, and they made good choices by and large. So I think that is something that over the next couple of years, I think especially going into the 2022 election cycle, I think you're going to see that the governors that lock down the least, or lock down but then open back up the most, like as quickly as possible, you're going to see them be highlighted, because they're going to be the ones that go, hey, we saw what was going on. We thought, hey, maybe we do need to lock down a little bit. And okay, now we've locked down. We've done the 2 weeks to slow the spread, not the 1 year to slow the spread, the 2 weeks to slow the spread. And we did that, and everything was, and we kind of gone on with our lives. Kristi Noem is going to be able to be, I believe she's the only governor who did nothing. Said, nope, people can go about their business, go and do your thing, you'll be fine. So she'll be able to do that. I think based on this speech and her, and just her general presence, and then obviously her policies, I mean, especially during COVID, she's going to be a force in the GOP for years to come. Like I said, she's young, she's attractive. She's, when it comes to a conservative viewpoint on the biggest issue of the last, year and a half, and going into 2022, it'll be the last 2 years. On COVID, she's somebody that can say, I chose freedom over lockdowns. She's going to be able to say that more than anybody else. So she's going to have some place and some pull in the Republican Party going forward. It would not surprise me if she ran for president in 2024. I don't know if that's the way to go for her. It might be good. I mean, I would like to see her run for president, just for the fact that I would like to see her on the ticket, maybe as vice president. Because right now, like I said, Ron DeSantis is far and away the front runner. If she was the if she was the VP to him, I think that is pretty much it. I think that's end of story. That's a great ticket. So I think it wouldn't surprise me if she runs for president. It also wouldn't surprise me if she's on the ticket. If she's going to be on the ticket, Ron DeSantis would have to be the candidate, the presidential candidate, because he locks in a swing state. So you already have that. So if you're looking to kind of shore up some extra support, bringing in a woman from a conservative state, conservative woman too, that kind of brings in, that kind of shores up. That does bring you some extra clout. That does bring you some extra followers. You put a woman on the ticket, you might get some extra women votes. So that works out. That actually sounds pretty good as a ticket. So yeah, keep an eye on Kristi Noem. I think she'll be kind of a player in the Republican Party for, probably at least the next 10 years, at least. And, but yeah, go back and watch her speech at CPAC from this year. It is a really good speech. Like I said, it's a little bit long, but it's not 90 minutes. If you sat through Trump's 90 minutes, then sitting through 25 minutes for Kristi Noem it's going to be no problem. So go and watch that. If you don't know who she is, she's great. So just go back and watch that. Now, moving on, there are some other people that gave speeches. For the most part, again, you have to remember, we're conservatives, we're kind of boring. So we're kind of boring, which is fine. I've been saying for over a decade, I would like a boring president. I want a boring president. Back in 2000, we elected George W. Bush. I thought he was going to be a boring president until 9/11 happened. So that kind of sucks. And then 2008, we elected our first celebrity president, basically. He did everything like he was trying to build an entertainment career. Every word that came out of his mouth wasn't policy. It was entertainment. So we had Barack Obama for 8 years. I'm sick. I got sick of Republican. I got sick of a celebrity president. And then what did we do? We fucking elected a celebrity president. We elected a guy that was on a reality TV show. We elected a guy who was, he was in a huge, He was in a wrestling match at WrestleMania against Vince McMahon. I mean, he was part of that whole show. This is a guy who is completely in entertainment. He's a celebrity president. I want a boring president again. And Joe Biden isn't boring. He's not boring, but he's not boring because it's sad to watch him go through what he's going through. It is so sad. Joe Biden is roughly the same age as my father-in-law. I love my father-in-law. My father-in-law should not be president of the United States. And Joe Biden should not be president of the United States. It is no. And I'm not talking about just the age. It's not just the age. It's what comes along with that age. And I think we all know what that means. So, but the other speakers at CPAC that I think were really good, very, very clear and concise, and at least they had their moments. Number one was James O'Keefe. If you don't know who James O'Keefe is, he runs an organization called Project Veritas. He's the investigative journalist who found out that Planned Parenthood was selling baby parts to, I don't know for what, but he found out they were. He found out that they were advising, how they're basically, I think he's the one that discovered that Acorn was basically advising pimps on how to set up their sex trafficking rings under a guise of real estate, basically. So he basically found that out. He destroyed Acorn. Acorn basically had to go out of business. They were nonprofit technically, I think, but they were gone within like 6 months after that got shown. He's the one that's been blowing the whistle. He gets a lot of whistleblowers out of these big tech companies, places like Facebook, places like CNN. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's the one who actually was able to get the video that showed that ABC news reporter talking about how ABC killed the story on Jeffrey Epstein 2 years before Jeffrey Epstein was finally thrown in jail for sex trafficking. So James O'Keefe is kind of a big deal, and he keeps getting sued. He keeps getting arrested and things like that for just doing investigative journalism, which I thought was freedom of the press. And so far he's okay. But the main thing that came out of that speech is that he talked about how his page, Project Veritas, got banned from Twitter because even though he blurred out all of the characteristics, basically all the numbers and street names and signs and everything of a VP of Facebook, when they came up to his house and said, "Hey, why are you censoring people? We have you on tape saying you're going to censor people." He, even though he made sure that none of this guy's information was made public, his street name, his address, the number on his house, anything like that, he blurred all that out in the video. Even though he did all that, Twitter still banned his channel because they said it violates the anti-doxing regulations. The problem is that places like CNN, they do the same thing, only they don't blur out the numbers on their houses. And on top of that, CNN isn't doing this. When they go and do the same thing, they do it to people like you and me. They don't do it to the VP of Facebook. So what James O'Keefe did was he highlighted, okay, this is the reason why Twitter gave Project Veritas why their account was terminated or suspended. CNN decided to talk about it, and they started just going on, but most of what they were saying, he was highlighting, here's what they said, and most of it was not true. So James O'Keefe is going to be suing CNN. And here's the thing is, I've seen some interviews with James O'Keefe on this. He does not plan to settle. He wants to get to to an area where we want your business emails. We want to see those because we want to see, do you collude with Twitter? What are your internal conversations about Project Veritas? And if he goes through and he actually gets that stuff, that's going to be great because CNN may actually, I mean, this may ruin CNN. And I think highlighting their lies, especially CNN, because MSNBC, is biased. Fox News, is biased. And even, there are other places, Vox, is biased. The Daily Wire, is biased. They come out and tell you effectively, this is our bias. CNN tries to say, oh, no. We play it straight. And, we're just telling the truth. We're trying to be very, very good and everything like that. So I think if James O'Keefe gets what he's looking for, and I think he will, and I hope he does, this could ruin CNN. But if they do find any coordination with any of these big tech companies, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Apple, this is going to be a huge thing. And any court ruling that comes out of that is going to be just a bombshell. So that is something you should find out. You should go and watch James O'Keefe's speech from CPAC. I believe it's on. You may not be able to see it on YouTube. I think the same thing with Trump's speech. Trump's speech got removed from YouTube, and YouTube has been banning people who repost that. So I would find Rumble. Rumble is a good video platform. Go find James O'Keefe's speech. I think it's only like 7-8 minutes, so it's not long. I definitely recommend go see that. He did a great job. Now, my favorite senator in the U.S. Senate is Ted Cruz, and he gave a speech as well. I'm going to say this. Ted Cruz is, I think, the most solid conservative. Again, I think I said this before, who I think should run for president in 2024. I think Ted Cruz is going to run for president in 2024. I don't, he's that, like, I always compare him to an NFL draft pick. Are you trying to find someone who is that solid, this guy's going to be a great draft pick. I just need somebody that's solid. He's that guy that's solid. He's not that guy that is the game changer. It's kind of, imagine right now if you had a chance to draft Brian Urlacher or Terrell Owens out of college, and you could do it at the same time. Ted Cruz is Brian Urlacher. He's okay. He's going to be good. He's going to be very, very good, but he's not this spicy, really, boisterous. He's boring. He's your basic conservative. And I mean basic in every way it's meant in the last 10 years. He's your basic conservative. So, but he's probably my favorite senator in the U.S. Senate, him and Rand Paul. But in this speech, he tried to it sounded like he was trying to be a hype man. And Ted Cruz should not be a hype man. He really shouldn't. He should just stick to what he's good at. He's very knowledgeable. He's very smart. This is a guy who has a Harvard degree, and he graduated from Harvard Law, and many of his professors have said he's probably the most intelligent person to ever come out of Harvard Law. He's argued before the Supreme Court. I mean, you should know who he is. He's actually really entertaining too when you have just when he's one-on-one with people. When you see one-on-one interviews with conservative outlets, conservative personalities like Ben Shapiro or Michael Knowles, he's actually really entertaining. He should not be a hype man, because he sounds like he's someone who's sober trying to act drunk when he's doing that. So he shouldn't do that. Go ahead and watch his video, watch the speech. I mean, it wasn't a bad speech. Like, if you read the transcript, it wasn't a bad speech, but watching him give it, to me, it was a little cringe. And yeah, Ted Cruz should not be doing that. So if Ted Cruz ever watches this, please don't do that anymore. Okay. We love you the way you are, buddy. All right, just stick to that, and you'll be good to go. So that's all I have for today. We went over CPAC. We went over the highlights that I had. Again, just to wrap up, again, I'm telling you, Trump should not be running for president in 2024. We really need something that is Trumpism without the Trump. We need to take all the good things that Trump did and really run with that and have somebody else kind of be the flag bearer for the next 8 years, and then adapt and change as we go along. Ron DeSantis right now, to me, the obvious front runner for 2024. Kristi Noem, really kind of a dark horse in the party, and I think is going to be a major player going forward. And then I think overall, you're seeing a lot of good things come out of CPAC. I'm actually a little bit more optimistic in the future for the conservative movement, especially since Biden has really had a very terrible 6 weeks, first 6 weeks of his presidency. He's been awful in every way. Provided we can get HR 1, which is the election law at the federal level, which is garbage. This will make sure that almost ensure Republicans can never win another election at the national level. We need to make sure that does not pass. If we can make sure that doesn't pass, then that'll be good enough. And we can get some inroads in 2022. We can, take back the House and Senate. And I think that gives us a lot of good momentum going into 2024. And if we have someone that is like Trump with a bit more polish and less of the character flaws, I think 2024 looks like 1980. I think you have somebody who can be a Ronald Reagan come in and just destroy Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is a weak and feckless leader, just like Jimmy Carter was. And I think if you have someone with a strong, principled, and polished personality, and you bring them in, I think you can have a flag bearer for a solid 8 years, and really ride that wave through to 2032, and I think be good. So let's keep that going. I think there are some reasons to be optimistic at this time as a conservative. Let's take what we got out of CPAC this time around and just keep it going. And remember, 2022 is really right around the corner. So, make sure you are staying involved. Keep an eye on who you think you want to support, and make sure that you are, if you're a Republican, you are going to vote Republican no matter what, like I am. Make sure you're holding those Republicans accountable, because if we need to primary people, it's primary people. If we need just some new blood in certain places, if you got some old 75-year-old dude that's still in office and you're like, look, you've been here for 40 years, it's time to get rid of you, let's bring in somebody else, that's fine too. Let's just get some people in and make sure that we have some solid conservatives going forward. But I think CPAC was a great success this time around. And I think there's reason to be optimistic for the Republican Party and the conservative movement as a whole. So I want to thank you all for tuning in today. If you have any ideas for what I should discuss, I generally focus on politics, but I want to try to do other cultural events. So if you have any ideas, please go ahead and leave a comment. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And I will talk to you next time. Thanks.